Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now from London by Alex Ntung. He is an independent analyst on the DRC and Great Lakes region of Africa. And from Leicester is Michael Tshibangu. He's an analyst and political advisor for the opposition leader, Moise Katumbi. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Alex, let me begin with you. These elections, are they happening on a level playing field?
I think it is probably the best to start by saying that the pressure, the decision to go for election has been really because of pressure from international community. As you know, that 2 years had gone, where Kabila has been trying to extend his mandate. There have been a lot of internal pressure, the church, the opposition, the international community. So on the 8th of August, he announced that he was stepping down. There have been so much concern whether actually the election will be happening. By a great surprise, calendar has been respected up to today. So to answer your question, it is really difficult to say based on the fact that they don't want external observers. It is an issue, especially that the opposition is divided.
Right.
It isn't something you could say that is being organized at the same level.
And there's a bunch of things that have caused everybody to hang a question mark over the elections. Let's go through some of them. Michael, let me start with you and talk about the refusal from the Electoral Commission to have any logistical assistance offered by the United Nations as part of MONUSCO. They already have a mission there. Now, when they refused to have the UN help, Michael Tshibangu, was that showing sovereign independence or was it showing some sort of insecurity?
It shows insecurity. You ask whether the election was on a level playing field. The answer to that is not. It is an election that from the very start, the people in power have tried to control the whole process, and the refusal of the help from MONUSCO is part of that desire to be totally in charge so that the result will reflect the will of Kabila, who is stepping down. Kabila has decided to step down under pressure, but obviously for his own security, he needs to make sure that the person that he has chosen wins the election. So not only that MONUSCO will not help, but international observers from like the EU or the USA will not be welcome.
Right. And Michael, so correct me if I'm wrong at any point in this thread, right? So you support Mr. Katumbi, you advise him. He's barred from running. He's thrown his support behind Martin Fayulu. Now, Martin Fayulu still believes enough in the process, and Moise believes enough in the process to compete, to say we're giving it a go. So doesn't that tell us that there is an element of legitimacy, given that these opposition leaders are all still competing in these elections?
Well, to this day, we are still calling for a credible election. The fact that Fayulu is candidate, that we support Fayulu, does not mean that we believe that this process is fair. We are asking, for example, for the Electoral Commission to abandon the use of the electronic e-voting system that is trying to implement. We think that this will facilitate fraud. So there are a number of things that are still cause for concern in this process. Whilst we have a candidate that we support, we are not confident that in the process in itself. And it's not just the politician, even the people of DRC. The recent polls have shown that people do not trust this process. They do not trust the Electoral Commission that is organizing the election.
Alex Ntung, the electronic voting machines, is that a problem for you?
It is a problem because up to today, it has not been accepted by the opposition, but the opposition have really, at the end, decided to go ahead with elections as planned. But when you ask opposition leaders today, they're saying, with or without, electronic system, that we go ahead. But then that really sends a confusing message to the voters. In some areas, we are talking about now, less than 3 weeks for the election to start happening. And some areas, as we know, we're affected by conflicts, and others extremely physically inaccessible, and financially the CENI in August, they still had 20% of the budget. It is incredibly questionable to say how that is going to be implemented. Leave alone the argument whether the electronic system is going to be efficient.
Right. Yeah, militias are causing havoc in the east. 250 people are dead from Ebola in North Kivu. This is the second worst Ebola outbreak in history. So it's hardly a peaceful situation right now, and they're trying to run an election. Michael Tshibangu, let me bring you in here and talk about what's in the control of the opposition leaders. Haven't they got nobody else to blame but themselves, given that they couldn't even unify behind one candidate? So initially you have Mr. Tshisekedi saying, yes, I'm going to support Fayulu, and then he says, no, actually, I want to be the president, right? So the opposition is split. If it goes to Shadari, doesn't the opposition have nobody else to blame but themselves?
In an ideal situation, you would want the opposition to have one candidate. But the main issue here is not whether the opposition has one or two candidates, but it's whether the election that will be organized will be credible. Because in DRC, people want change, and it is unlikely that the people would vote for Shadari because of Kabila has been in power for the past 17 years, and he hasn't done much. He promised a lot of things, but to this day, we're still talking about wars, chaos. We're still talking about part of the country that are controlled by militia. So the people of DRC want change. So whether the opposition have one candidate or two candidates, they are very unlikely to vote for Shadari. And the recent polls have also shown that Shadari really does not have much in terms of support, popular support, that is. So we are concerned mainly about how the elections are going to be held. And we fear, unfortunately, that Kabila has kept tight control of the Electoral Commission, and has refused all sort of support. He has refused to allow even observer from the EU. So you really want to make sure that after the 23rd, when elections are held, the person that the Electoral Commission will announce is the person that he has chosen for his own security, because he knows that when he was in power, a lot of crime had been committed. So you want to protect himself.
Right.
So the opposition is unfortunate that they didn't have one candidate.
Let me ask you about Shadari, because there seems to be this consensus among opposition supporters that Shadari is a sort of sock puppet for Kabila, and that he intends to prolong his power through Shadari if he takes over. But might it be that the man is actually his own person? He's an independent politician. He just so happens to have the blessing of the man who's vacating the seats. Where's the evidence that he's a sock puppet for Kabila?
The evidence is before he was appointed. This is a person that was fighting actually for Kabila to stay in power. To be honest, he has even been sanctioned by the European Union for the role he played. Protesters was killed when he was Minister of Interior. A lot of abuses was done. That's why Shadari has been sanctioned by the EU. This is the kind of person that Kabila has chosen to continue. Not somebody that is going to start afresh, but somebody that before he has even taken power, before he's even president, he's already has his hands dirty. It's already under a sanction list. So Kabila has chosen him because he's the first person that can protect him, because they are on the same, they've done crime, they've all committed crimes, so they both need to stick together. So, and when you take such person, the message, his own message, you see that this is not somebody that wants to bring change, but it is somebody that wants to continue with what they have started together with Kabila. So it is somebody who's been with Kabila since Kabila took over. So for over 20 years with Joseph Kabila. So he's one of the hardcore Kabilists, if I may say.
Alex and Ntung, a lot of people had hope when Kabila took over from his dad, Laurent. As we look back on the 18 years, assuming that, okay, after December he's gone, you never know in politics, you never know in DRC politics, but looking back, did he leave the country better or worse off than he found it?
I think there is something that must be acknowledged, is that when he took over in 2001, the country was divided in three. Without talking about other armed groups controlling small areas. At that time, we had RCD Goma and RCD in North, another RCD in Kisangani area. He was incredibly instrumental in Sun City dialogue, in the peace agreement that brought the different armies together. I guess that's something that should be acknowledged despite different part of failure to secure the country fully, and responsibility which is shared. Really, we are talking about now. There have been 20,000 human troops. The failure of DRC. I'm not trying to justify the government, but that's something that should be acknowledged as a legacy, to bring the larger faction rebel groups together and be able to get them at the negotiation table. That has been something that should be acknowledged following the death of his father.
Michael Tshibangu, so we got some context from Alex. Is that context and giving us a bigger picture in terms of the tough job that Kabila took over? Or is he being an apologist for Kabila? Which one is it?
Well, Kabila, it's not as if Kabila chose to allow the rebel group to come. He had no choice. It was a stalemate. The country was at war, and no one was winning the war. So under pressure for the international community, the party came to the table and they found a compromise, a deal that allowed him to be elected. So, and since then, things have been going downhill, and we see that the country is now divided again. There's potential of war if elections are not held, credible elections are not held in the coming weeks. Already we've seen that the election was supposed to be held in 2016. We are in 2018, so that's 2 years after. And Kabila, what he started, what he did before, he hasn't done it by trying to stay over. Now the country is even more divided. We don't yet have rebel group, but when you look at the population and what is happening, you see that really the tension there, the potential for chaos and more violence is there. One thing could trigger it, and that's bad election. Alex and
Ntung, who's the best man to take over?
I would say that I will come back to what Michael was saying about the opposition. I think I was in DRC in last 2 weeks, and something which is really worrying and very concerning. There isn't a right person at the moment to be able to take the leadership challenge in DRC. I know it sounds very pessimistic to say, but both opposition goes in opposition because they are outside of power, they are outside of the regime. So in kind of metaphor explanation, they are on board. If they're out by being they're taken out, they become opposition leaders. There haven't been some consistency in terms of values, to be able to say, look, this is what we are fighting for. The example is with the Kinki Mulumba. That's 2 days moving to the opposition. The alliance are shifting in a very unpredictable way. And I will not be surprised if by December 23rd, something else is changing. So there is a serious issue of value-based leadership in DRC. And that's what we are facing today. And the pressure from the international community really much more based on alternance, as they say in French. Making sure that the person who's in power is moving. That's not the biggest issue. Again, I'm not trying to justify anything such as Kabila's regime. It is much more important to build from a bottom-up approach, build a strong leadership that could actually be able to sustain development in DRC and peaceful development.
Michael, very finally, if Emmanuel Ramazan Shadary, the preferred successor of Kabila, his own handpicked man, if he wins and there's no widespread evidence of widespread fraud, would you accept it and support him?
Well, we wouldn't support him, but as Democrat, when a credible election are organized and everyone says that the results are credible, of course you would accept that. But unfortunately, it is not the case. You have mentioned Moise Katumbi, who has been sidelined. This is not the only candidate. You also have Mbemba, who has been prevented from running. Already you see that this is a control process where Kabila chooses who can run in the race, eliminates the candidate that he fears the most, and is making sure that the person that he has chosen would win. Under this condition, I really doubt that Shadary can win freely. And when you consider what Kabila has promised and what he has failed to deliver, and that Shadary is somebody who represents the system, I personally do not see how Congolese people can vote for a person who represents what they want to change, want to break away from.
Right. It's a massive country with extraordinary importance in the region, especially on the continent. All eyes on the election. A lot of people hoping it goes well. Human Rights Watch is not so optimistic. They said, and I'll end with this, gentlemen, they said, less than 1 month before the scheduled elections, the repression continues. Those responsible for past abuses have not been held to account, and the enabling environment for credible elections does not exist. That from Human Rights Watch. Gentlemen, pleasure having you on the Newsmakers, Alex Ntung and Michael Tshibangu. Look forward to talking to you soon.